work, a lot of internal investigation and observation of myself in relation to others, particularly in challenging relationships with other human beings. I've developed this psychological, spiritual schematic, kind of shaped off of certain spiritual insights shaped by different teachers, without mythological insights, the insights of Carl Jung, etc. So, the deepest, innermost layer is love. That which you are requires no justification or apology. This is what you could call consciousness, being, awareness, the unconditional, the unseen. Some people call it God. It's the space that is inherently benevolent and allows all things to exist. And it's what you essentially are, and it's what everyone essentially has. It's the essence of self. Sadness is what you feel when that is questioned. I call these emotions that I call the pure emotions, or the emotions of the first transgression when one is really young. And it can come through family trauma, it can come through being ridiculed on the playground, it can come through a lot of different things. But then this sadness is felt. And that's when the love that you are, that you inherently feel as your own value and worth is questioned. And then from that develops the first ring of fear, which is that who you are requiring justification and apology. What follows that is anger. And anger is what you feel in defense of your sadness. It's like anger, I call it, sadness is royal guard. Because when you're sad, if someone makes fun of you and you cry, the socialized society says, oh, don't cry, we don't cry here, cover your emotions, blah, 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 blah. That makes us feel awkward, that makes us feel uncomfortable, that makes us feel blah, blah, blah. And then you get angry. And then when you get angry, they're like, no, civilized people or blah, blah, blah don't get angry. And so then when you develop this apathy, which I call the anesthesia to numb the intensity of your anger and sadness. And this is the layer from which the problematic sense of self or unconscious self or egoic self is built on. So you have this, and so that egoic self is the mask over the truth of all feelings, true feelings. Because when one starts to really dig deep, they have to uncover actually deep feelings within themselves that are true anger, true sadness, that obscures the flow of the love which they already are. So on top of that is built like a persona, a mask, for you to engage the world and dance in the world. So everybody is dancing in the world with these personas covering these feelings of apathy, anger, and sadness, and ultimately obscuring the love that they are. Mm-hmm. So outside of that is depression, which is disowned sadness. When you disown sadness and you don't allow it to flow, you become depressed, and actually both in the sense of the feeling of depression and the chemical imbalance, because you haven't let sadness flow. Actual sadness, if you actually cry, is a very releasing emotion, which is depressing. Depression is contracted. Contempt is disowned anger. And examples of very contemptuous people range from, like Adolf Hitler was a deeply contemptuous person who has experienced all those realms of sadness, anger, and apathy, and so far gone from the love that he is, that his own inner violence made him kill millions. Manic happiness, ignored, disowned anger, and sadness. And so when it's like this hyper attempt to connect to the pure love that one is. And so, but the thing is, you can't ignore contempt, and you can't ignore depression, you can't ignore all those other layers, you can't. So there's this ignorance, and sometimes when people, it's why some cats don't like certain kind of happy songs, because there's this kind of ignorance to the human condition. Whereas you can make a deep happy song that is engaging, that sadness, that anger, that love, in people who are down and people who are depressed. And then outside, the furthest layer is love outside of self, the projection and removal of what you already are. And so on the unconscious egoic layer, everyone is dancing, looking for the love outside of themselves, and have different layers of depression and contempt and mania, and go through those, fluctuate between those moods, looking for love outside of themselves. But the things they don't realize is that they already are what they're looking for. So now, once a one becomes aware, then what I call the aware personality construct develops and then starts to turn inward and then dives down into those layers of apathy, anger, and sadness to realize and uncover the love that they are. And then once you realize the love that you are, you engage sadness, anger, fear, apathy, other people's personality constructs, contempt, depression, manic people, all with love. And so you realize yourself as love, and then you engage the world as that love. And you're always constantly dancing and constantly uncovering it.
So I have a question.
Yes.
So if you've spent your life covering up all these feelings and suppressing all these feelings that most people have, because that's what we're taught in society, and that's, I mean, like, instantly you're born and these things start happening. What are some steps you can take to uncover the love, the layers, and be aware of what amazing gifts you have, and the
it has to come from I think the primary thing is recognizing the value inherent in one's existence. And that's simply different, like simply stopping and taking time to just be, like it's become a catchphrase these days, but just to simply be here now and to be fully present to what's going on around you.
How do you do that? How do you be here now?
Well, there's different techniques. There's simply just embodying your body. So simply, oftentimes, one of my favorite things to do is just to notice sense perceptions, notice the environment, notice people.
So when we were at the pool, you weren't looking at the hot chicks, you were...
Not necessarily, at the same time.
Yeah.
When it's like, because part of it is when you disown, like if there's a feeling of being drawn to look at the hot chicks, if you hold that feeling if you hold that feeling at arm's length, then the thing is, it's like to embrace that feeling, to embrace that you are looking. At the same time, not hold that as some kind of lower strand. It just is what it is.
Right.
And so you acknowledge that. At the same time, it's allowing all the different parts of yourself to come up. And the thing is that in the light of presence, you can't.
Devon was letting some parts of himself come up.
Yes, indeed. You can't ignore anything, and that's the thing, is that one is training themselves to accept. Because the thing is, when you have all this stuff bottled up and all covered up, when love is unconditional, and therefore it shines itself on anger, it shines itself on sadness, it shines itself. There's a mistake that people make in their own development when they think that, oh, I'm trying to get rid of anger, I'm trying to get rid of sadness. And it's like, no, in fact, you feel those much more deeply when you start to dive deep into yourself. And that feeling, when you dive more deeply, develops that deep compassion. That deep compassion that connects you to the whole of humanity. And therefore, there can be no others.
That's right.
And it's felt. It's thought about, but it's felt.
Yeah.
Deep in.
Yeah.
So it requires feeling. It requires, and each person's path is unique to them.
Yeah.
So all I can do is talk about what in my path has worked for me and has inspired me. And because we are human beings, you can find parts of my path that have been inspiring. But ultimately, if it's playing music, if it's doing photography, I think one aspect is also being in tune to the expressive power of a human being. I think because traditions have been so split, and people say, go off to the monastery, spend time meditating, contemplating, that we have left behind, and we're realizing that we can no longer leave behind an aspect of ourselves, is that human beings are expressive, embodied beings. We express ourselves, we laugh, we cry, we play music, and when that part of ourselves is pressed down, that natural need to express ourselves comes out in much more dysfunctional, much more shadowy, much more negative ways. So the expressive energy in the universe will express itself. There is no way it cannot. But if you hold it down and you have a conflict or a negative relationship with that, it will express itself dysfunctionally.
Right.
Because that's what happens.